I've been aware for quite some time now that when you look across the UK, you will find quite a lot of deaf tutors working in community colleges, further education colleges, and of course within the voluntary sector, where they teach in the main British Sign Language to hearing students. Now, in 2007, in September, new regulations came into place and a new qualification framework as well for all teachers working and teaching within the lifelong learning sector. And of course, deaf tutors working within the sector also come within that scope. I have to say that as a hearing person, I had little real insight or awareness into the particular barriers faced by profoundly deaf learners in education until about 20 years ago, when I happened to be working with a couple of deaf signing youth trainees. Now, that experience made me aware of some of the difficulties that they had faced. Imagine, if you will, being a child at school, learning English on a blackboard. The first letter A in the alphabet, what is it? It's just some chalk scribbles on a blackboard. It maybe looks a bit like a tent, but without the sound equivalent, without any phonics, it's just an abstract pattern. So you can imagine, therefore, that acquiring language and literacy skills in English can be quite a painful process for those people for whom British Sign Language is their first language, who may have been or had a significant hearing impairment before that age at which children normally acquire language. When we think about deaf signing teachers within the lifelong learning sector, we've got to realise that they may be under a requirement to achieve these new awards. And also, of course, we also need to think that they have a right to access high quality teacher education. An interpreter working with them in the classroom is obviously a help. But what about formative and summative assessment? In teacher education, assessment often takes the form of an essay or an exam or a reflective diary or log. In some cases, it may be sort of writing a fairly substantial action research project. Then there is the specialised language of teaching. In teacher education, we recognise, for example, that there is a difference between a syllabus and the much broader idea of a curriculum. How do we sign that? How do we sign that difference? How do we explain, if we're talking about theories of learning, constructivism? Is there a sign for constructivism? MSET aims to do three things. That's the East Midlands Centre for Excellence for Teacher Training. Firstly, we are eager to increase the awareness of deaf issues amongst our teacher educators and mentors so that they can work more effectively with either individual deaf signers within an otherwise hearing group of teacher trainees within a class, or with an entire group of deaf signers. And that's why we're particularly pleased to have been able to commission this resource on behalf of the East Midlands and also the National Teaching and Learning programme. Second, we are continuing to develop deaf-friendly resources to support teacher education. This in the main means that we're trying to find ways of incorporating signing into e-learning resources, which can be delivered as part of a blended learning delivery framework. Third, we are exploring at the moment and are moving forward quite rapidly now on the idea of a new curriculum for teacher education for deaf teachers, whereby we can bring deaf teachers together as a peer support group into what we might these days call a community of practice. We can give them the support of a deaf-aware teacher educator or mentor, and we can enable them to access high-quality resources using BSL signing embedded within them. And through that mechanism, we can sort of hopefully make high-quality teacher education more accessible and more immediately available to deaf tutors wherever they are in the UK, not just the East Midlands. So finally, I think it's worth saying that although in the main, as I said earlier, that deaf tutors are teaching British Sign Language to hearing students, there is so much potential here for signing teachers to be delivering a much wider curriculum of skills and education to the deaf community in the UK, and I think that's a strategy that we ought to strive for.
Action Deafness became involved with the Leicestershire and Leicester City Learning Partnership Working Group. One of the working groups is the BSL Strategy Group, which consists of the East Midlands Centre for Excellence in Teacher Training, the City and County Adult Learning Services, Deaf Teachers, and CILT, which is the Centre for National Languages. Through looking at BSL as a strategy and an operational issues, we identified two main core issues that were happening for deaf teachers and for mainstream colleges. For the deaf teachers, they spoke about the lack of appropriate access to teacher training. They talked about their experiences of being the only deaf teacher in a mainstream college, having to work through English as a second language, and the lack of access to appropriate supervision within a college context. For the mainstream colleges, they talked about the lack of understanding that they had around their legislative requirements, such as the Disability Discrimination Act, the Disability Equality Duty. They also talked about the lack of understanding around the communication and cultural issues that deaf tutors face within a mainstream college, and also where to seek appropriate support to ensure that they could comply with their legislative requirements. So that's how the DVD has come about. So the purpose of producing this DVD was to look at how we can provide appropriate support, information and guidance for teacher training providers. And what's been achieved throughout this whole process is a shared commitment amongst all of the partner organisations to ensure that deaf learners can become successful teachers. And as an additional resource, there's also the East Midlands Deaf Tutor Forum that's available through Action Deafness.